4 people sit at a blue table on a small stage with a wooden podium. 3 wear tan ranger uniforms and cowboy hats, 1 wears a striped shirt and cowboy hat. A presentation screen and tent backdrop are visible behind them.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Core Discovery 2 and the 10 of Many Voices. And true to its name, the 10 of Many Voices lends itself to allow a lot of different presenters to come in and present different aspects of the Lewis and Clark expedition and things that have happened since the Lewis and Clark expedition. So this is the bicentennial commemoration, 200 years since Lewis and Clark and the members of the expedition passed through here. And so every hour we have a different presenter. And this afternoon we have Pete, John, and Tom Fredericks. So I'm going to let them identify who they are. So
a person wearing a tan ranger hat and gray uniform shirt holds a microphone while standing on a stage. Behind them is a wooden podium with partial text visible mentioning Department of the Army and Bureau.
Pete, raise your hand. John, raise your hand. And Tom, there you go. And they're Mandan Hidatsa. They're going to speak with us this afternoon about horses, cowboys, and Indians. And just to give you some affiliation, on the end down here, these are ranchers from Twin Buttes, and this gentleman right here keeps them out of trouble. He's an attorney from Colorado. So please welcome the Frederick brothers and their presentation.
Thank you. She left one out. We're members of 3 affiliated tribes. It's Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara. My mother was raised by the Arikaras, and we were actually our Mandan Hidatsa, but we were raised by my mom was raised by the Arikara, so we claim them too. Our theme is Cowboys, Indians, and Rodeo, and mine is I'm going to do one on Indian rodeo. So I'm an Indian, and I've been rodeoing, and I rodeoed all my life. So I'm going to talk about that. Talk about kind of myself. I don't believe to be any better than anybody else, but God given me a gift in rodeo, and so it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm not. I'm just telling you how it is. That's the way it was. And I'm a member of 3 affiliated tribes, like I told you, but I also have an Indian name, and my Indian name is Charging Eagle. I get that name through my Mandan culture. It's my grandfather's name was Charlie Grant. Charlie Burr, and he was Charging Eagle was a brother to Forebears, one of our Indian chiefs. Anyway, to get along with the story, I started rodeoing with the kids in around Elb Woods back in the early days in the 50s, and we used to go to little rodeos around the reservation there, different places like the Chase had arena, and up in Joey Charging had an arena. We had about 4 arenas on the reservation. We would go to each one of those on a practice back in early April, and that's kind of how I got my start. And in 1953, my cousin, Billy Hall Jr. and Esley Thornton Sr.
A person wearing glasses and a cream-colored cowboy hat sits at a desk in front of a wooden podium. They are dressed in a black shirt and appear to be speaking during an indoor presentation.
And Angus Fox qualified for the National High School Rodeo out of Beulah. And we went to Beulah, and I won the saddle bronc riding, and Angus won the bareback riding, and Esty won the bull riding. So we got to enter the National High School Rodeo, which was held in Rapid City, South Dakota, in 1953. And in 1953, we had to send our applications down to the rodeo secretary at the National High School Rodeo in Rapid City. So Esty and Billy were
Give me that.
We're from Elbow Woods. They lived there in Elbow Woods, and I lived up by Twin Buttes. I rode a bus to school, see, so I sent my application in from Halliday, from the bank there in Halliday, and they sent theirs, and we had to get our applications notarized. And when we got down to the rodeo, we drove all the way down there in 53, and all there was gravel roads all the way, and we got down there, and Esley and Jake weren't even entered. They threw their entry out because they weren't notarized. And I was the only one that they left in it, but I had me in the bull riding instead of saddle bronc riding. So I was in bareback and saddle bronc, and I went back and checked the bulls right away, and they were sure enough big bulls, you know. And I was a freshman in high school, so I was pretty worried about that. And I tried to get out of it, and they said, no, we take you out of it. See, my specialty was bareback anyway, but they had me in that one. My other event was saddle bronc, but they didn't have me in that. They had me in bull riding. So I pleaded with them and tried to get them to take me out. They wouldn't do it. They said, if you take you out of one, you're out of it completely, they said. So I stayed in and got on my first bareback horse there at the Nationals, and we only got one because there were so many contestants from all over the country, in the United States, in Canada, and so Jake, Billy Hall Jr. and Esley Thornton Sr., they helped me down on my horse. And when I got down on my horse, I was pretty nervous because the horse they told me was around the shoot help, and the producer said that horse had never ridden before. I didn't know whether they were trying to scare me or just, so I was pretty worried. He was, sure enough, he's a shoot fighter, and he clawed on the front of the chute, you know, and of course Esley, he got right up there, and I remember could hear my spurs jingling. I was so scared. And luck would have it, when the horse jumped out of there, he was, I don't know, the Lord must have been on my side that day. I made a good ride, and I went to the lead in the bareback.
A person wearing a cream-colored cowboy hat and glasses sits in profile against a gray curtained backdrop. They wear a black shirt and appear to be speaking, gesturing slightly with their hand.
Back riding, and held the lead all the way through and won the National High School Bareback Riding Championship. I was pretty happy. And the three of us, we pooled our money and went to Custer, South Dakota. We thought we needed some money to get back on. We just had enough entry to enter or either go back home. So they wanted to ride these other, my cousins and my best friend there. He was engaged to my first cousin, Audrey Hall. So we all were together, you know. We went over to the Custer, and sure enough, Esty got into saddle bronc and bareback, and I entered the bareback and saddle bronc, and Jake rode bareback. He entered bareback, and we didn't have very good horses, Esty and I. And sure enough, Jake won second in the bareback ride, and there was only one header there too, so he had enough money to get us home.
Jake Hall.
So we came back home.
Jake Hall?
Jake Hall, yeah. Billy Hall Jr. Jake Hall was his name, yeah. And then we went to another one in high school. I went to the National High School Rodeo, and when I was a senior year, in 54, it was too far away. It was way down in Texas somewhere, so I didn't even bother to go. But I did go to the one in Nebraska. It wasn't too far away, so at 55, I went to it, and Angus qualified for it too. Jesse's brother Angus, and we got down there, and sure enough, we had a pretty good team together. The North Dakota team. There was Don Rame from Hebron, and I had a horse that I pulled down there. And before I went, my old horse trailer was so beat up, it looked pretty shabby. So my sister and my mother, they fixed it up, and my mom made me a good shirt. But she put the buttons on the wrong side, but that didn't make any difference. I got down there, and we were entered in the right events. We made sure everything was right this time, around 55. And came to the last horse, and I had a bareback and a saddle bronc, and I was in the steer wrestling. And I pulled my horse down there. I got from my brother Buzz, and I split split that horse. We bought him out of New Mexico. My brother was in Las Cruces going to school down there working on his degree. And so I pulled him down there with Dad's car. And I remember I drove halfway down there and I got tired, so I just pulled into some farmyard, somebody's farm along the road. It was pretty close, but I went close to the trees. And so I let my horse eat. I had a little hay along for him.
Two people wearing cowboy hats sit and stand at a desk with a sign reading Depart and USF visible. The standing person wears a black shirt and holds papers while speaking. Gray curtains and wooden elements form the background.
I slept in the back of the car. I was by myself too. But then I got up the next morning and drove on into Harrison, Nebraska. And then when we got to the rodeo there, like I was saying, I was in the bareback and saddle bronc. So I rode my bareback and I run my steer. And then in the end, we were neck and neck for the all-around. It was one of my teammates, a saddle bronc rider, Angus Fox, was right behind me. It was between me and him for the all-around. Of course, we all wanted to win the all-around because they gave a big horse trade away, you know, and all the prizes was in the all-around. And so I come out third in the bareback and third in the steer wrestling. And Don Rame won the steer wrestling with a 5 flat. I was 5'3", and then somebody moved me down to third, 5'2". But he won the steer wrestling, and I won the saddle bronc riding, and I also won third in the bareback riding, so that gave me the all-around. So I did get the trailer. So I just left my old funny horse trailer sitting there, loaded blew up in a new horse trailer and brought him home. And we got home, and then that following winter, 1955, we had an old guy, back in the old days, they had a little paper there at Twin Buttes that they call it USSR, and the editor was John Starr Sr. And he seen all our publicity that we were getting. See, I not only won that, but my first cousin, Joe Chase, was also in college down in Texas or in Oklahoma, and he won the saddle bronc riding in 52 and 53. So we were getting all that publicity, so he dubbed that the home of the champions. So Twin Buttes is known as home of the champions. We had 3 national championships, no, 5 national championships between the two of us. He had 2 in saddle bronc, and I had a bareback title in 53 and all around in 55 in the saddle bronc. So we had 5 national championships. So it was dubbed home of the champions after that. So they got a sign on Twin Buttes. If you ever go there, well, they'll see that. Anyway, they went on through that, and then I went into college, and I had a pretty fair career in college. Now I got to hurry along now because I get my brothers here. They get 15 minutes.
Sorry.
Two people wearing cowboy hats sit indoors. The person on the right holds papers and wears a black shirt. Behind them is a black banner with partial text reading US DEPA and Nature and ENT of an apartment and fairs, Burr and Isle Park say.
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
He hadn't even got out of college yet.
Well, to make a long story short, my mom told me, she said, whenever you do something good, son, and my dad said the same thing, they were together, and they said, when you do something good, you'll give it back to whomever you got it from. Try to give something back. So I went through college, and I was doing pretty good in college, so I transferred up to Dickinson, and I thought, well, we don't have a Dickinson college rodeo team. So I brought my articles of incorporation from down in Mexico where my brother was. I went with him my first year. So my second year, it was 1958, I went to Dickinson State Teachers College, and I organized the rodeo team there. And so I was doing what my mom said to do, and I was also helping myself, so be close to home in rodeo in college. And I ended up having a pretty fair. I never did win a national championship in college, but I was runner-up in 58, 57 to the all-around. And then I graduated out of the college ranks and went into NFR, National Finals Rodeo. of the Professional Rodeo Association. They made us all, if you got so far along in rodeo, well, you had to buy a card, and that was kind of the rule of thumb. If they wouldn't let you into these rodeos unless you had a PRSA card. They had their own association. So I went to, through the NFR, they go by the top 15 to go to the finals. So they keep track of your points. They got a point system. Colorado Springs, I suppose most of you know how that works. Anyway, I qualified in 2 events in '61. I actually didn't qualify in the saddle bronc in '61, but I didn't want to actually make 2 events because I knew that they had all this ranked stock down there, and I found out that we had to get on 2 head a day on the weekends, and it was just over 5 days. Of course, now they got it stretched over 10 days. But then I went ahead and rode in that, and I was ranked 8th going in the bareback riding, and when I came out of the finals in Dallas, Texas in 1961, I was ranked 4th. So I ended up 4th for the world. Got beat out by 3,500 points. Each dollar counts for a point. $3,500. During the past summer of '61, I had a horse stop on me at Cheyenne in the finals.
2 people wearing cowboy hats sit at a table with a blue cloth. One stands and speaks while holding papers. Behind them is a presentation board with government agency text and a map on an easel.
And one that stopped on me at Salinas. And that particular year, they wouldn't give you any re-rides under any circumstances. So I lost out on that. That probably cost me maybe a championship. Anyway, I went through to the professional rodeo, and then I went into Indian rodeo after that. I was kind of through with that. So I went back into the Indian. And while I was in my professional career, I went to an Indian rodeo in Gallup, New Mexico. And gosh, I was really saddened by the way the Indians were treated, especially the rodeo guys. They just weren't treated right, I didn't think. So I thought to myself, I'm gonna pick up this deal and see if I could straighten it out. So I got with the right guys. I knew the guys that I rodeoed with that was they were on the board of directors. So I got them to pass a ruling that they could let the Indian rodeo be managed and helped with professional PRSA stock and officials. So I got that portion done, and then went into the Indian rodeo stuff. We developed all our organizations throughout the United States and Canada, and we have, I think, 13 associations, and they're all for themselves, each one, but we take the top 2 at the National Final Rodeo. So we dubbed it the International Final Rodeo, and it exists today. As our finals are in San Luis. They're in San
Carlos,
Arizona, at the Gold Casino.
Golden Globe Casino or something?
Yeah, it's the Gold Casino of the Arizona Apaches there in Arizona, anyway. So it's on the 19th through the 23rd, if anybody wants to go. It's a good rodeo now. With that, I'll better end it so my brothers don't kill me here. Thank you. Jeez, bad ending.
Well, I guess I'm up next, and I'll try to kind of hurry through this.
I just forgot about my grandma.
What?
And get back on schedule here, since Pete took a lot of time. I'm John Fredericks, Jr., and I'm a member.
A person wearing glasses and a cream-colored cowboy hat sits at a table holding papers. They wear a striped blue shirt. Behind them is a dark banner with partial text reading "Depart" in USFO visible.
For the three affiliated tribes here, I grew up on the reservation and ranched all my life in the Twin Buttes area and some in the west segment area. And my Indian name was given to me by my clan father, Pete Coffey. It's Iduba, which means, he said, as best he could explain, was the shin of the buffalo. Some people just call it ankle, you know. But anyway, that was the Indian name I got. It came from my uncle Wilfred Medicine Stone, who was killed in action in World War II. So I kind of cherish the name because of that. When I was about 14 years old, I was on what we call the Big Lease Roundup northwest of McGregor Camp. The Big Lease was leased and run by a few large non-Indian ranchers and was separated from the Indian operators by a drift fence that had 4 wires. It went north and south just west of my Uncle Jim Hall's ranch and on north by Spring Buttes and over into the Independence country. Now that I've sort of located us, I was repping for my dad, John Fredericks Sr., with my sister, Badine. About this time, Alba Woods was having a fair and rodeo at the old fairgrounds that was located about 1 mile south of Alba Woods. So I told Bo, my sister, that I would take the cattle we picked up of my dad's and take them by the ranch. She would stay and finish the roundup and end up at Ag Kennedy's. She knew the Ag Kennedy family real well and could depend on them to take her horse back home or wherever she wanted. She would stay and finish as I wanted to go to the fair and enter the rodeo. So I headed east, leading my horses and pushing the cows ahead past McGregor Camp and down Moccasin to my Uncle Jim Hall's camp and finally to my dad's ranch. My dad was pleased with my performance, so when I asked him if I'd go to the fair, he said, go ahead. I changed horses and headed for the fair about 21 miles east. I got into bareback riding, I recall. The horse was wild and nervous, as I was. I called for the horse, and when they opened the gate, I was really going to make a showing for myself. I spurred at the horse's neck while he was still in the chute, and the horse ducked under my leg. Lucky for me, he gave me a time to regroup and get my leg back on the side of his neck so I could spur him out as he left the chute. It didn't do much good.
A person wearing a cream-colored cowboy hat and light blue striped shirt looks down at papers they're holding. Behind them is a black banner with partial text reading Department. US 4. Department. Burr. Rechi and S. GI.
However, because a few jumps out of there, he left me hanging in the air and then to that good old sandy loam that flourished in our river bottoms. As I drug myself out of the dirt and brushed my jeans off, I could hear the band playing. It sort of made me feel better. I had my first bareback bronc horse behind me, and the band was playing even though I bucked off. The good part of it was I had a couple of uncles playing in the band, Charles Huber Sr. and Arthur Mandan, along with Floyd Montclair and others. The important thing was we had at the fair that we had a place for the band, and we had our own band that played the music, and they done a good job. These early events I just spoke about set the pace for me as a cowboy in professional rodeo, as well as ranch cowboy, when being a cowboy really meant something to those of us that were in it. Because being a ranching cowboy meant you had to get up at daylight, get on wild snorty horses on those cold fall mornings. Even if they bucked, you were expected to take it all out of them by the time you rode into camp that evening. Put up hay all summer with horses until the first snowfall, then ride on roundups, even if it meant freezing your face, to get your cattle together so you could feed them the hay you put up during the summer. Now I want to talk about our own early day ranchers and why ranching was so successful on the Fort Berthold Indian Reservation. The year of 1934, our tribe adopted and accepted the Reorganization Act, which provided for a constitution that included a corporate structure or the ability to set up a corporation. Most of our Indian men folks were warriors that were used to hunting buffalo that were in abundance during that time and prior to that time to provide a total living for their families and rode good horses to protect their families against the enemy tribes that they fought in the early days. So the lifestyle of being a rancher and raising cattle with horses to do the work with our Indian men took to this new life. They elected a tribal council to run the government of the tribe, and they got busy working with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Together they secured a federal charter to do business on the Fort Berthold Indian Reservation. The three tribes involved were the three tribes that now are part of this reservation: the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara.
A person wearing a white cowboy hat, glasses, and a striped blue shirt sits at a table in front of a black banner with partial text visible reading Department. US 4. Department. Burr and Recchi.
Together they talked the Bureau of Indian Affairs into providing them with an agent to work with them in developing and using their resources. Thus the Fort Berthold Livestock Association was born. After setting up a board of directors and getting their agent on board, they met with all the families of the reservation and decided, with the assistance of their new agent, just how they were going to run things. At this point in our times, we sort of had a three-branch government. The Bureau of Indian Affairs provided the law and order. The council was our executive branch, and our association was the Congress, so to speak. Anyway, it worked real well for us at the time. Working together, our people established the following system through the use of their corporation. They set up a repayment program. Any male or female over the age of 18 could secure cattle in 10-head increments, provided they had a camp and hay for the cattle. I believe early on it was capped at 50 head. Back in those days, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good bunch of cattle. Many of our better ranchers increased their herds to 100 and better. Some contracted with large meat companies and ran yearlings in larger numbers. The best mother cows were purchased originally from this program, and with good bulls, our Indian ranchers became noted for good cattle.
32.
People and even bought bulls from them. Then we set up a bull program. The board and the agents purchased some very good bulls for their operators, which developed into some outstanding cow herds on the reservation. The association purchased the bulls and kept them and fed them until it was time to put them out with the cows. So much per head was charged for the use of the bulls. No money changed hands. The Indian cattle had a big ID brand on the shoulder. Therefore, since they were considered government property, nobody bothered them. The board and the agent also purchased supplemental feed and salt in large increments for a cheaper price. All this was kept at the Elmwoods Agency headquarters. A flour and feed mill was also set up whereby the operators could bring in their wheat and get it processed so they would have flour for foodstuffs and bran for their calves. The Indian operators never paid cash for any of the above production costs. A record was kept at the headquarters office, and when they sold their calves, you brought your proceeds in and your yearly expenses were deducted and the balance was given back to the operator. The association members also set up a small loan program which provided for Indian.
A person wearing glasses and a tan cowboy hat sits holding papers, wearing a light blue striped shirt. Behind them is a dark banner with partial text reading Department. US 4. Department and Berrecci.
And family needs for out-of-the-pocket expenses during the year from one fall to the next. The loan was paid off the same way that other operating expenses were paid. when each operator sold his cattle in the fall, some operators sold locally and some shipped to other central markets like Fargo, North Dakota, South St. Paul, Minnesota, and to Chicago, Illinois. I may have missed one or two, but those were the main markets during those good prosperous years for our livestock people on the Fort Berthold Indian Reservation. And I say good prosperous years because at that time that system provided a good life for all of our people on the reservation, and all the people participated in it. I don't think there was a family that didn't. And they had pigs and chickens and other livestock, milk cows, to provide foodstuffs for the family. And I don't want to, I'm talking about ranching, but I don't want to leave the women folks out. They worked very hard during those days. They put in big gardens, and together with their family, they kept them clean and canned all summer long, not only from the garden, but also from the wild fruits and so forth we had in the area of the lowlands. The association members also set up a small loan program which provided, let's see, I think I covered that, okay. It had to be a good program because all the families participated. It provided a good life, taught our younger generation how to work and take on responsibility at an early age. Basically, during that time, we had no welfare. We had no drugs and very little alcoholism. We were living the good life off the resources our Great Spirit provided for us. We were happy. We loved each other and helped one another. We rode many miles to worship our Great Spirit and give Him thanks for providing these things for us. Then came the Pick Sloan era. The dam was built at Pick City and backed water up the Big and Little Missouri rivers. Our timber was gone, our feed base, our water holes, our protection. And our Indian ranchers left their heart and soul to wither and die with all the resources and animals that the water from the dam destroyed. Some other ranchers tried to ranch on the upper bench lands they were forced to relocate to due to the Garrison Dam, but were not very successful in the process. We lost our credit program that FHA took over. We're now in court with the FHA trying to keep our land together. We lost our repayment program, and our funds were generated from the Bull program Superintendent Morgan gave to the Tribal Business Council without our authority. But most of all, we lost a great livelihood. Thank you.
A person wearing a white cowboy hat and glasses holds papers while seated in front of a dark banner displaying text mentioning U.S. Forest and Department.
You know, I'm the youngest of the family, and I just wanted to tell you that, you know, when I grew up, growing up, doing chores was riding about 2 steers and maybe a colt, and if they didn't get me hurt by that, then they'd put me on a bucking barrel, and I'd ride that bucking barrel till they cut my head open or something, and that was just like doing chores for me. And then when they were rodeoing hard, we'd be up there working, and I remember Pete going in road gear when I was on the rake, and he wanted to get done with his field because he wanted to go to a rodeo in Wolf Point, and he was going so damn fast that the rake came off and it stuck in the ground, and I just went flying in the air. So I walked home and told him, "Hell, I'm not riding no rake for you." And then one time we were rolling up hay in the hayfield. Buzz, he came home. I don't know if he come home from a rodeo or a dance. But Swede Holland was in the haystack, and we were around there playing, and hell, he went to sleep when he was pulling the hay up, and he pulled the hay all over on top of the guy. And then one time, Pete, he came from, we were all haying, we were really doing good, we were just about done with the field. And Pete, he come back, I guess he's feeling guilty because he wasn't helping haying. He was rodeoing, he came into the field, About 10 minutes, he had the damn tractor on fire, and he had stuff burning, and my dad went over there and said, "Get the hell out of here." He said, "You're a cowboy, you're not a hey man, you shouldn't be riding a tractor." But, it was a lot of fun growing up on the ranch. As my brother stated, we did a lot of work. I did a lot of the haying, and I stayed home. My mother, I started rodeo, and when I graduated from the 8th grade, I won the high school bareback ride and qualified for the nationals. But my mother said she had enough cowboys. She didn't want me to be a cowboy, and so I went to college and went into sports and got a scholarship to play football, and then I went to law school and became a lawyer. Minot State I graduated from in undergrad, and I graduated from the University of Colorado Law School, and I never left Colorado except to come home here. But I wanted to give you a little idea about what life was like. You know, I remember I was the youngest, so I was always the guy that was kind of...
A person wearing glasses and a light tan cowboy hat stands in profile against a dark backdrop with partial text visible mentioning the Army, Department of Energy, Land Management, and U.S. Forest. They wear a white long-sleeved shirt.
Taking care of things that, like when we'd have a horse roundup, you know, they'd start out over here in what Buzz called the big lease. They were wild horses, and so they'd start them around across the river, and they'd come up on the top, out by Pete's place there at the end of the road in Twin Buttes. We were taking them to my dad's ranch, and these horses were wild, and our horses, their horses, would be about played out by the time they got up on top of that, coming out of Tunnel Point and down there on what was that, Martel Bottom, and they'd come out of the breaks up on the divide there, and so I'd be standing there holding a bunch of horses. I'd have a truckload of horses unloaded, and they'd take new horses. And I remember one time my cousin Wesley Hall, he was coming up there. His horse was all played out, so he did. But I didn't have a horse for him, so he was just kind of playing around with me there. I had the truck, and I was going to load the horses. But I thought, well, I'll jump on the back and take a ride with him. And I got us both bucked off. His horse had enough going, so he bucked us off. But we took them horses all the way to my dad's place, wild horses. I remember that one of the last roundups I think we had, of taking them horses into the corral.
They're up into civilization. Huh?
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, you know, I'm doing a lot of work on the Garrison Dam, the taking, and the way the government looked at our life is they tried to buy an acre of land and say that the value was whatever the market value was. They didn't look at the value of the actual way of life. On Fort Berthold, at the time of the taking in the 1940s, 85% of the tribe lived along the river. We were river people. 85%, and all the allotments were along the river. And so at the time of the taking, and this is documented in our reports, 6% of the Indians were on welfare or some kind of public assistance. And they all had family, like John said, they had family gardens, they had little cattle. Everybody was self-sufficient. And that was because, you know, we had wild plums, we had June berries, we had choke cherries, we had wild... I know right by our place on the Little River, where my folks lived, we had a little patch. It was just like an orchard. You know, we had all those fruits in there. And then we had wild grapes along the river. And if we wanted to get coal, we got on the ice and we'd go along the river until we found a coal seam that we wanted to, that my dad...
3 people wearing cowboy hats sit at a blue draped table on a small stage. A banner behind them lists government agencies. The person on the left speaks into a microphone while holding papers.
Dad knew was pretty good coal, and that's where we got our coal. And we got wood from the trees, and our cattle grazed in the river bottoms. It'd be windy, blowing, and they'd be fine. You know, just like it was just like a shed for them. Those trees. I know the people would come to my dad's ranch on the Little River and they'd say, "John, you got a paradise for cattle here." And it was. It was a very nice ranch. And I never realized what happened to my dad, because he got up to when they flooded the Missouri, he didn't really have his heart in ranching anymore. He was depressed. I didn't know he was depressed, but I just wondered what was wrong with him. But now, as I studied it, I understand. But ranching then got much more difficult. And when the Army Corps of Engineers took our property, you know, the United States valued it as what you would sell a piece of property. They didn't value all these other things that were valued. The wild animals that we lived off, the game that the subsistence that was provided by the terrain and the climate of being by the river. I got 5 minutes. You guys took all my time. But anyway, what we're trying to do now is, you know, we've progressed. You know, we had a little guy that valued our property. Buzz talked about the tribal council. We didn't have big experts. We didn't have lawyers like myself. Our people did the best they could, and they negotiated a pretty good contract. They got power in there. After the taking, they were supposed to have a block of power. But and the act said that the secretary and the tribe would negotiate a contract, and we did. And they negotiated and I have a copy of that contract. But it went to the Congress, and Congress just wiped everything out and did whatever they wanted. And we ended up with, I think, about 12 million. That's all on the PowerPoint, but I don't have time to do my PowerPoint. About $12 million. And today, we valued that, and we used experts, and we got the way it should be valued. And there's two school of thoughts. Is how much can you earn from an acre of land by putting efforts into it? And then the other way is to value it on what it costs to live. You know, if you lived off coal and wood, then you move up to the top and there's no wood, no coal, then you have to buy propane. So there's a consumer kind of aspect to it. What does it cost you now to live? It's a hell of a lot.
3 people wearing cowboy hats sit at a blue draped table with water bottles and papers. Behind them is a black banner listing federal agencies. One person on the left gestures while speaking.
More to have electric heat and propane and that kind of stuff. So that really impacted our tribe. And when we studied the tribe in 1992, when we passed the JTAC law, 94% of our people were on some form of public assistance. So that ought to tell you the kind of impact that the Garrison Dam had on the Fort Berthold reservation. So we went from 6% public assistance to 94% public, some kind of public help. So we hired experts. We hired an economist out of New Mexico. We hired an economist out of that graduated from Cornell. And we valued these. Now the JTAC was a group that was appointed by the United States to represent the United States, and they found that we did not get just compensation for our bottomlands. So we studied it. Remember, they gave us $12,000. And so they studied it, and they came up with a number of $182 million for the low side, using the New Mexico, where you earn what you can earn from the land, and the Cornell economist who valued it as what you lost, how it cost you as a consumer, and also what all the wild animals, everything you lost from a way of life, and that came up to $411 million. Well, Congress said, you know, they said, well, we don't know if this is right. The Secretary of the Interior disagreed with his own JTAC committee that he had appointed, and so he sent it on to Congress, and then Congress enacted a bill where they gave it to the GAO, the General Accounting Office, to look at it. And they said, well, they've overstated their amount, so what we should do is, remember the tribal council hired a little appraiser that probably from Partial or from Garrison or Minot or someplace that appraised the land down here. And he came up with about 22 million or 23 million. And so the GAO said, well, we think that's overstated. They were willing to take 23 million back when in 1949, when they had no money, they had nothing to hire an expert with. So let's just give them the difference between the 23 million that they said they were entitled to back in 47 and what we paid them. And then they took the corporate bond rate and present valued it up to the present day, and that came to 149 million. And now they went.
3 people wearing cowboy hats sit at a table with a blue cloth. Water bottles and papers are visible on the table. Behind them is a dark banner listing various U.S. government departments and agencies.
And there's a lot of this kind of going on now. The river, 23% of the land that was lost as a result of the Pick-Sloan program was Indian land, and there were 8 dams on the river, and so there's 8 tribes that were flooded out. And the reason for that is Congress. It was easy for the United States to take Indian land because it was in the name of the United States. It was underdeveloped. They thought it was cheaper, but it had a crippling effect on the Indians. And now Senator McCain, he's saying, you know, they went to Cheyenne River, and Cheyenne River got a value that we all claim is the right way to value the land, the value of what we lost as Indians. And that came to 290 million, and they lost 104,000 acres. Well, the economist that did that is Robert McLaughlin, and he's the guy that valued Standing Rock, and he valued Cheyenne River. Well, finally GAO went along with Bob McLaughlin's economics, and so they passed the JTAC bill at Cheyenne River for 290 million. So that means that if we get parity with that at Fort Berthold, we should get 411 million back in 1992, which is going to be a lot more today. We're thinking maybe $1 billion. John McCain is saying, how come you guys keep coming back here? I mean, how many times are you going to get your head in the trough, he said at the last hearing. Well, we're coming back because we're entitled to just compensation. When you get land taken for a public purpose and it's private land, you're supposed to be able to get just compensation. And so that's the argument that we're saying we didn't get just compensation. Your own people, and Congress said we didn't get just compensation. They said that in their findings in the JTAC law. So we've got a big fight going on, and John is head of a group we call the Upper Missouri River Allottees Association, which is, and when Congress passed this 149 million, 90% of the land that was lost was allotted land, meaning individual land, and they gave the 149 million to the tribe instead of to the allottees. So that's the fight we're at now. And so we don't want to be fighting between the tribes. So we're saying to the tribe, you keep the 149, we're going to go after the 411. So that's kind of where we're at. And I know our time is up, but I had a pictorial. I wanted to show you how we lived back.
3 people in cowboy hats sit at a table with a blue cloth. The person on the left speaks while gesturing. A backdrop lists various U.S. government departments. Water bottles and papers are on the table.
When, but that'll be another day, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Well, they gave us a wealth of information, and unfortunately we don't have any time for questions, but hopefully if you do have any questions for Tom, Pete, and John, they can answer them at the back of the Tom V. And here in about 5 minutes, we're going to have Harry Beauchamp and Harry Beauchamp III speaking about Assiniboine culture and history. Thank you very much.